Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to What's Up Wednesdays with the professionals of the roundtable. Today we are joined by.
Joseph Wong?
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. What do you do?
Well, I work as a chiropractor and a physical therapist.
Do you
Yeah.
kind of like work it together, or do you do them more so separately?
I work it together.
Together. Awesome. How'd
hmm
you get into it?
Well, I got into chiropractic first.
Mm,
I was thinking about medical school after college. So I had a bio degree, thinking of doing a bridge program, going for a master's. And my current business partner and brother-in-law at that time, or still brother-in-law, so he was in chiropractic school. He called me up. He said, "Joe, he's like, what do you think about becoming a chiropractor?" And I said, I had no idea what that was. And he said, well, he's sort of like a doctor that does martial arts. So that's, martial arts. He knew that was my first love. And sure enough, that's, it had me sold on that. So I applied, got in, and, never looked back. After I graduated, started our own practice. And at that point, he went off to physical therapy school. It was at Newman College, or at that time it was Newman College. Now it's Newman University. So that's a full time program on a part time schedule. So while running two practices at that time, I decided to go to PT school also, and then got the PT degree afterwards. And it's just been a joyride since.
Started off with a real busy schedule.
Yes, yes,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So you started off with Cairo, went to PT. Now
Mhm.
you've got like this beautiful blend going on. What
Yeah.
kind of patients do you see? Are they like chronic pain? Are they injury, maintenance?
So I guess the advantage of having both disciplines, I'm able to see both type of clients. Seen almost every type, from children on through seniors.
Hmm.
In terms of injuries, yes, we've seen people that are injured at work, people injured in car accidents, trip and falls. Any type the type of sports injuries and other such related injuries. And then on the other end, with physical therapy, I see a lot of geriatric knee replacements, shoulder replacements, hips, the classic things that you would see for physical therapy, including stroke. And I have a few peds, not as many,
Hmm.
but I've done the gamut. Got interested in manipulation under anesthesia at one point. So we were in the surgical centers in Jersey doing frozen shoulders, frozen knees, frozen backs. But kind of stopped that just because the it was too early. Like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with surgical schedules. They start around 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have to get up around 4 and
Oh,
start heading out. Yeah, that was after a couple procedures. I decided I was like, this is this is
yeah.
not good for me long term.
Absolutely. I mean, sleep's important.
That is just we're only doing like one or two cases each time. It's like if I had it lined up where some of the
Hmm.
orthos would do like 6 to 8 surgeries back to back, it might be worth my while in that sense. What
Right.
did it was fun. Like I have to say, it was fun. It was enjoyable. And I definitely enjoyed working in a surgical setting with other practitioners.
Hmm.
Then later on, I got into electromyography. That's the one we do NCV EMG testing. That's the one where they can use that test to. It's a diagnostic test to rule out any type of nerve damage.
Ah.
Right? You see a lot of neurologists and
Mhm.
physiatrists or physical medicine specialists do that type of testing. Physical therapists and chiropractic, they also get into that, and that's a subspecialty that some of them get into. And I've done that for a while, and I guess once my mentor passed away due to age and cancer and such, decided to walk away from that as well. And we well, I had two large outpatient practices. One was in Center City, Philadelphia, Chinatown, and the other one is up here on Jameson and Red Lion. So the Chinatown office ended up burning down on
Oh.
January of 21. Oh, it's kids having a good time for New Year's, and they burned the building down. So after that, it was around COVID, and things were way too expensive to rebuild, and the insurance couldn't cover
Right.
everything. So after that, Dr. Danny and Mino, they're good friends of mine, and he saw my situation, and he said, Joe, he's like, you want to just come and share space with me at Healing Your Way, and it's like we could just practice. Like it's like you rent a room, and we'll just share everything. It'll be. So I said, yeah, why not? Right, give me
Yeah.
something to do. So I decided to start there. Just took off from that point.
Yeah. The rest is history.
Yes. Yeah,
I love
it's
it.
nice. It's nice to work in that setting where it's
Hmm.
kind of like a one-on-one clinical setting instead of like a larger outpatient
Right.
clinic where I have large staff of people to manage and so on.
Hmm. To feel like a little bit more personal.
Yes. Personal, and again the one-on-one factor is interesting to work with each person, at a 60-minute cycle per patient. So that's long. It can be a long day nonstop.
Hmm.
That's something that's very different. Where at my other office, usually I would, mainly diagnose and delegate to my staff, and I'll treat as as needed.
We
Yeah.
have our first question that came through. Someone wants to know, how can chiropractic care and physical therapy help with concussion therapy?
Concussion therapy. Concussion therapy. Obviously it goes with the stage of concussion. There's a lot of good methods out there to treat concussion. So chiropractic and physical therapy, within those realms, I find that you can branch out and learn other things. And I've learned through the Upledger Institute craniosacral therapy. And much of the research on craniosacral shows that they do a pretty good job with concussion. There's other modalities out there such as acupuncture, what Dr. Danny does, laser therapy, which Dr. Danny can also do in addition to chiropractic and physical therapy. Cold laser has been proven to help with concussion as well. But in that setting, to answer your question, I will probably stick with craniosacral work, laser for concussion. And
Mhm.
again, it varies depending on how severe the concussion is still. But I'm always about balancing. You bring the body back into balance, there's a much better chance for recovery.
Mhm. 'Cause, do you have one, and this doesn't have to be just concussion, do you have one particular case that you've worked on that just like sticks out as like a golden memory for you?
Wow. I mean, I think within the realm of healing, everybody's got this idea that, I, even your based on your question, it's just like this golden, right, healing that you're talking about. It's when people come in bent over in severe pain, and after one session they walk out of there singing your praises, right? And
Mhm.
those moments I've experienced often enough, right? Usually it's acute pain, people with thrown out their backs, sprain their shoulders, things like that, or they have a wry neck, they wake up, they can't move their neck in the morning. Yeah, moments like that, sure, end up being a hero for them. They come in bent over or unable to move and crying in pain, and they walk out there feeling completely normal again. uh, Things like you know concussion or other type of disorders that's been chronic, they've had it for a long time, that doesn't quite happen that way. And
Right.
those at those moments where patients come in and they're like, oh, so and so came to you and they walked out in one visit, they're expecting the same. And
Mhm.
then at those moments you kind of have to manage expectations and to let them know, it's like, listen, you didn't quite get like this overnight. Some people
Yeah.
wake up with a wry neck. They've had this for 10, 20 years and plus. So for them, a lot of it's just their body's deconditioned. It's just been off balance for so long. So that is a lot of it's education,
Mhm.
teaching them and helping them to get back on their feet. And the manual therapy or any type of modalities we do at that point is to help manage, help them to come back into a state of balance, help them to manage the pain, you know, using various physical modalities, manual modalities, as opposed to medication that they've been taking too much of,
Right.
which maybe at that point be, it's blood works, liver enzymes and kidney enzymes may be going off due to the chronic use of pain meds. So it will help to manage the amount of use of pain meds that they're under. So I mean, there's a whole spectrum, right, from
Right.
quick care to long term, but it's very individual, and it's
Mm,
up to a person's sheer will. If they want to get better truly, and they're willing to do what it takes, they can.
that's beautiful.
Oh,
And it's all a state of mind. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, kind of a
yes,
thing.
agreed.
Absolutely. Well, we have someone who says, when I think about chiropractic care, I think of cracking backs on a weekly basis. Is that healthy to do so many back cracking, or even I'm a chronic knuckle cracker all the time?
No, that's a good question. It's a very valid question. So there are different schools of thought with chiropractic, and I within that school of thought, there's a sector of chiropractors that believe in exactly what you just said, and whoever made that question and comment. But yes, there are a lot of chiropractors that out there that believe in just removing the subluxation complex, where if you go there and it's like how you crack your knuckles, the spine itself tends to get fixated, it collects gas, and it'll interfere with the proper nerve uh, movement of the body. So getting adjusted is kind of like popping your knuckles at that point. It'll free you up, and after a while it starts to lock back up again. And when I was in chiropractic school, I've always had this notion or this the issue with frequent adjustments, in the sense that I always believe that which is true, bones don't move without muscles. So if you don't correct the muscle that's spasming and it's locking the joints, after you adjust the joints, if you're able to even adjust the joints through the tight muscles, it's just a matter of time before the muscles will pull the joints back out again.
Mhm.
And thereby people end up going to see a chiropractor 2 3 times a week, indefinitely. And does that method work? It does. This is why chiropractic still exists today, because it does provide people relief. And if people have more discipline, if they stretch more and take better care of themselves, they don't need to get adjusted as often. And then I have patients that come in asking for that too. They're like, "Oh, I just want to get adjusted. I don't care to do anything on my own. I don't care to really exercise. I don't have time for anything else. Just give me a quick adjustment, let me go." So there are people that that model fits well for. Just personally for me, I always find it philosophically difficult to just buy into that model and adhere to that type of business model. And I just find that to be not me. I do adjust. I love adjusting. I think it's a beautiful thing. But I do want to focus on the manual aspect in terms of balancing the muscles, balancing the fascia of the body. And once you get the fascia to release, the majority of the joints will start to open up and release on its own. And then whatever else is still left, that's when I focus in more on the like the specific chiropractic adjustment to release those points. And if the patient does it right with regards to follow up with exercise, they they could come in as needed, or once a month, and it varies from person to person.
Mm,
But most of my clients, I usually get them to a point where they just come to see me.
feels so rewarding.
That does,
I love
yes.
that for you. Um, we have a lot of friends in our
Mm.
chat today. Um, kind of answered, what ailments do I come to see you for?
Well, I mainly focus with musculoskeletal ailments.
Uh,
It's what I usually see on a regular basis. I've seen all sorts of ailments. I remember this. One young lady came to see me before, just to have her energy balance, because she was not able to have her menstrual cycle, due to the chronic history of drug use and so on. So at that time, I was using NES, Neutral Energetics. I was scan her body, and we would prescribe these infraceuticals, which is information contained in water. Prescribed that, and we also worked on her, adjusted her, and did tissue work with her. After a number of sessions, she was able to get her menstrual cycle back, and that was rewarding to see for her to just break down and say how she's able to finally get her cycle back and feel like a woman again. That was a big deal. And the last time I spoke to her, I remember I was driving somewhere to visit someone, and in the parking lot, she called me, and she was at her hepatologist, as the liver specialist, and she was asking me. She's like, "What did the infraceuticals do for me exactly?" And I said, "I thought we went over this." I said, "What's going on?" She said, "Well, I'm at my specialist, and they just did my blood works, and all my liver enzymes came back to normal, and he wants to know what I did." So it was quite a moment to hear that. And I was like, "That's wonderful to hear." I said, "That's good news." And I was like, "You try and explain infraceuticals to your medical doctor. It's a little tough." I was like, "I'm a little busy right now, but that's great news to hear." So that's the last time she and I, we spoke, and I assume that she's hopefully on a very good path for herself at this point in life. But I use that kind of extreme example to show like that those are the other
Mhm.
patients that I do see, would come in for not just for musculoskeletal type of.
Yeah, like the things that you wouldn't really quite expect, almost.
Right, right. Like I guess like Dr. Danny and myself at this point in our lives, we like to see things that are a little bit uh, out of the norm. You get tired of treating
Yeah,
just musculoskeletal pains, but
keeps it
things that are
interesting.
things that are more challenging
Yeah,
would be a lot more fun to see.
absolutely. We're keeping things interesting,
Mm,
keeping them fresh.
yes.
I don't know if you're allowed to disclose this, but we do have somebody curious to know who your most famous client was.
Mayors and senators.
Here's
Yes.
up there with the big names.
Yeah, so it's yeah, but yes, I'm not gonna disclose any names.
Respectable.
Yeah, an amateur boxer.
Mm,
It's just folks like that. But people are people.
yeah.
Whether they're famous or not famous, they still have ailments and illnesses. They just like to keep it on the down and low.
Hmm. We all bleed the same blood, really,
Hmm.
what it is.
Yeah.
And then you have piqued somebody's interest in speaking about, forgive me, craniosacral
Hmm.
therapy. Did I say that right?
Yes.
She hears a lot about it and she understands that it's a very light touch, but wants to know if you can give her a little bit more background about what it is and how it works.
So craniosacral therapy, that's more in the realm of osteopathic medicine. There's a branch, the institute I learned it from is the Upledger Institute, and through the Burrell Institute, who teaches visceral manipulation. Craniosacral therapy operates on the premise that the body's craniosacral rhythm, which is the cerebrospinal fluid flow that feeds the brain, it should follow a specific flow and specific rhythm. That the cranium itself is constantly expanding and contracting, just as the body breathes. It's about 12 to 16 cycles a minute. It's very slow, methodical, and you can much more easily see it on a baby than you would on an adult. You watch a newborn baby sleep or look at their head, you can see the fontanelle at the top. You can see it move. Right? If your touch is gentle enough, you can feel a baby's head move. As they get older, the sutures tend to ossify a little bit more, but the cranial sutures they still move, even in adults. It's when the cranial rhythm gets thrown off because our body is covered in fascia, and when muscles get tight and the fascia pulls differently, sort of like my shirt, if something pulls off and it just holds tight, then when I try to move the rest of my body, right, this fascia is now pulling. So if this fascia line was pulling around the back or anywhere else, and it's directly pulling and affecting the cranial rhythm, then the cranial rhythm, instead of expanding and contracting normally, one side may expand more than the other, or it may not move much at all. Then you're going to cause the brain to stress.
Hmm.
Right? And that's not a good thing when the brain stresses out, and it can manifest in all different ways when the brain is stressed. And more commonly, when people have cranial sacral rhythm that's off, tend to get headaches. That's one of the key things that they do get, in addition to many other issues. But the intracranial pressure is not flowing the same. And it's called craniosacral therapy because the sacrum is the pump near the base of the spine. So the sacrum and the coccyx bone, as that pumps and it starts to move the cerebrospinal fluid up. So when the sacral rhythm is off, it's going to throw off the cranial rhythm. When we do a balancing, we balance the sacral rhythm and we balance the cranial rhythm. And it is a gentle touch. They've always taught us to touch at the weight of a nickel, right? It's literally put a nickel on our hand and ask us to remember that weight. And that's the pressure we will use. But it's a matter of being able to feel it, right? There's a lot of research out there on craniosacral therapy, but there's doctors that still swear it doesn't work because they don't feel it. So, and obviously there's doctors like myself and many other osteopaths who do feel it. They research it, they write books on it, and it works. That's the bottom line. So it is cultivating a sense of touch, being able to feel the rhythm, and then rebalancing that rhythm. It could go more on and on, but that's kind of it in a nutshell.
So with you said it's easier to feel and easier to see in babies. Have you ever had to do it on like an infant or a baby whose fontanelles are still kind of open?
Yes, yes. I recently worked on a child that is about 6 months old,
Mhm.
working on him. And it wasn't easy. This poor child was injured during childbirth.
Oh,
It's one of those things, and it damaged the atlas, so that the cranial rhythm's completely off, and the intracranial pressure is too high, and they had the child scheduled for surgery anyway, so it was kind of futile to bring the child to me at that point. Yeah,
I have a
that's
bleeding heart. I'm sorry.
well, no, it's yeah,
Um,
these things happen.
so it's more so like a case by case, like your average 6 month old probably wouldn't need it, or do you think it would be something beneficial?
I think all children after they uh, you know are come into this world, it's good to work on them.
Mhm.
Yeah, so who you find is you have to trust who you find.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be very beneficial for infants to get some level of balancing. There's chiropractors that specialize in infants. There are obviously osteopaths and PTs that specialize in this area.
Mhm.
And it's good to have a child balanced so that it will help with their sleep, with their just their overall growth. And babies especially, they balance out very quickly. Right? It doesn't take much. And the older we get, our bodies tend to become a little bit more stubborn, and
Mhm.
change is a little harder. But for infants, they balance quickly. One or two visits, and they're usually good.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be something where there's like something blaring.
No, most of the cases with children that I see is more for ear infections.
Really?
Yeah, chronic ear infections. Craniosacral is great for that. You balance them out there, the ears strain, and no more ear infections.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, yeah. I had great results with adults with people with Bell's palsy.
Mhm.
If anybody's familiar with that, like half their face becomes paralyzed because the
Right.
facial nerve gets entrapped. That you bring the cranium back into balance, and the Bell's palsy recovers much faster. So
So cool.
yeah, there's different things, but always keep in mind if you balance the body will come back.
Mhm. So getting everything kind of in line
Hmm.
almost. Um, Words, I'm so sorry. Can you please explain what you were just talking about? NES and I'll hand you that one.
And infraceuticals.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, with NES, I would recommend that you definitely go to the website neshealth.com. Right, that's one word. And what they've used is, it's brilliant. They're able to capture the human body field, and they essentially decoded the human body field, where they found that everybody's system vacillates at a specific frequency. So, every organ, the liver has its own frequency, lungs, kidney, heart, etc. And when they do a scan, the developer, he's an acupuncturist. So NES is a great system for acupuncturists because everything's designed to read out for acupuncture language, right? In terms of the body's energy use, emotional blockages, and so on. And if you go to the site, you'll see there's a tremendous amount of information. I wouldn't do it justice on this podcast to talk about NES. That's that's a whole system onto its own. I mean, there's practitioners out there that only practice NES. And I jumped on board with that many years ago. When a friend of mine told me that there's this healing method where they use information programmed into water. I thought it was a joke. I called up the company, but I did trust my friend. So I asked him, I was like, what is this thing? I was like, my friend showed me this. I was like, I do trust his opinion. So they gave me some vouchers to get some, infraceuticals and to go and get a consult. So I did. I went to some lady out in this area, actually in the Newtown area. And I walked in there and, she had crystals and everything. And I was at that time still kind of more into the medical community. So I was a little bit judgy with the crystal thing. Now I have crystals everywhere, like I'm sure Mino's laughing her butt off at the moment. But yeah, I love crystals now. But at that moment, I saw her with the crystals and saying a prayer before we did a scan. I'm like, okay. I was like, this is exactly what I thought it would be, right? So after she did a scan, it had a whole lot of different colors on a sheet of paper. And based off those colors, she prescribed me 5 different infraceuticals. And she said, only take 6 drops. You work from 6 to 9 to 15 and 28. So I went back to the office. It's kind of laughed at it. And I was like, whatever, right? Here's the 28 drops and more. So I did that and I drank it down. And within about 5-10 minutes or so, I'm laying on my table shivering with the lights out. And I'm like, whoa. It's like, this is different. All right. I was like, so I'm there and I realized I was detoxing. So, I just kept shivering. And about 15-20 minutes into it, I'm thinking to myself, I got patients coming in soon. I was like, how long is this going to last? All right. So thankfully it cleared up. But after that, it piqued my interest. That's when I started to really study it and study it hard because obviously it did something to me. And it did change me around. It cleared up my energy. And, I just kind of fell in love with that system and I used it in conjunction with everything else I did. And especially with patients that I feel like are difficult to diagnose, where my traditional methods of diagnosing and musculoskeletal um, evaluations doesn't fit for what this patient's complaining about. I would then turn to NES, do a scan, and put them on infraceuticals in addition to treating them. And that young lady I shared the story about earlier with the loss of her menstrual cycle due to drug use, that she's one of those classic examples of those moments.
Cool.
Yeah,
So you've got a lot of tools in your tool belt.
got a lot of time to play.
You have a lot
Yeah,
of time to play. Are there any that you haven't told us about yet?
I mean, if it comes up in conversation,
You're
it's,
like, there's too many. I can't count them all right now.
it's, you come out of school wanting to do everything.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got the drive, you've got the time, you have the ambition, you might as well. If you can relax a muscle using myofascial release, and you can release a muscle using acupuncture or dry needling in the PT world, how do you know which method to use in any given case?
that's a great question. Uh, it depends on the time, and myofascial takes a little longer. Dry needling, or acupuncture release work, you just drop a needle into the spasm muscle, it'll pop, it'll release quickly. So, again, depending on time, and I tend to like to go from least invasive to most invasive. And for me, like I just use my hands first. If I could touch it and hold it and get it to release, I'll use my hands. I feel that the point is coming from somewhere deeper, more systemic, and it's not releasing fully with just my handwork. And I can feel that it goes down to a deeper level, that the surface muscles release, but the deeper intrinsic muscles are not. That's when I'll hold the point. I'll take a needle and I'll drop it at that point. I base mine's mainly only on feel. Right, Dr. Danny and his team, like I mean, they're professionals at that. And that's what they do is acupuncture. So they know all the points, they memorize the points, and they know how to move energy around in a whole different way.
Just a lot to wrap my mind around because
Yeah.
so you said there's different levels to the muscle.
hmm You have the deeper muscles. I mean, we go out to the superficial layers,
Mm-hmm.
right? The deep intrinsic muscles. You have muscles like on let's just say the lumbar spine,
Right.
right, where the transverse processes are. If you know your anatomy a little bit, right, there's muscles that are that tiny that connects between the vertebrae.
Mm,
You're not going to be able to massage, or you can't reach those muscles,
that makes sense.
right? So if you have a long enough of a needle, or you can rotate them and position them, and you work around other muscles to try and send energy through. Myofascial release work, through other teachings, we learn to extend our touch. So we would put our hands on someone and we would extend our touch downwards. And you would use that method to try and reach deeper muscles or reach other organs, so on.
So is there an easier, in your opinion, of course, is there an easier part of the body to work on than, or like, what's the most challenging part of the body to work on?
Oh yeah, that's difficult to answer. Yeah,
Is it
it's
case by
because
case?
because everybody's different. You would think the larger parts of the body, like we do a lot of work around the neck and back, but even then, it gets very challenging, right? It's sometimes much easier to work on a shoulder, or even abdominal viscera rather
Mm,
than back, right? It all depends on how far gone their back is. People that are elderly that haven't taken care of their back, and the bones are collapsing, and it's stenotic, and it's pressing on the nerves, and their muscles are weak,
mm-hmm.
and on top of that, they have significant weight. I mean, there's not much we're going to be able to do for them, right? Anything we do would be temporary, right? We release the muscles, get the muscles to feel better. They're going to walk away feeling good for a short while. But the minute they stand up and the weight comes on, if the muscles are not holding and not spasming at that point, their bones will collapse because it'll just crush down on the nerves, and their pain will be just as bad, if not worse. And that's why they go into a guarded state, and their muscles will spasm back up, and so on. So the folks like that, you have to educate them,
Yeah.
coach them, get them into a gym that has water, where they can exercise in water, where they can, think about losing weight in conjunction with whole lifestyle changes, and
Mm.
start to strengthen themselves. At that point, we can then begin something that's more meaningful.
Everybody's different. We have a question before this one, but this one has my interest peaked.
hmm
How much does our footwear affect our spines?
That's a good question. That's a hard question to answer. Um, it can affect you significantly if you wear heels every day, right? If you wear good sneakers with good orthotics, it'll help you get through. I mean, you have to keep in mind, humans we're not designed to walk on concrete. That's something very artificial. If you see studies done in Haiti, where a lot of folks there, they walk barefoot, and many of them are flat-footed. They don't have the same issues we have here with flat feet, right? We're very big on prescribing orthotics for flat feet, and saying that, oh, you can't have flat feet. You can't. It's just not true. And I've one Haitian friend that was in school with me. I mean, her feet as flat as a board. I've never seen anybody's feet that flat. No issues, right? But but that's but it also goes to show that she's also from Haiti. But their country, they walk on more earth,
Mm.
right? If we lived in the country land where we walk on grass, we walk on earth rather than concrete, we'll have less back issues. right? But you walk in concrete all the time. People that work in hospitals, they get their foot and ankle and knees and hip. They get that all messed up, right? I mean, even look at our modern day lifestyle with animals. Cats and dogs now have arthritis because you have to walk them on
Right.
concrete, right? Because well, you're familiar with dogs, right? You know how
That's
to,
my specialty.
yeah, right. You should, but they get it because they're not walking on Earth anymore,
Right.
right? Artificial surfaces, the force you put down comes right back at you. But to the person who asked about footwear, sure, if you wear heels and you walk on the same thing, it'll break you down faster.
Mhm.
Uh,
That just gives me another excuse not to wear them. I appreciate that. What does a session with you look like? Do you use only specific techniques or do you use multi things to address what's going on? Yeah, double whammy question.
well, I mean, a session, for example, I'll talk about the sessions at Newtown because that's run a little differently. In my other offices where I have a staff of like 16 people, it's, I got to keep everybody busy and I
Mhm.
don't have the kind of time that I do in Newtown. Newtown is more fun for me. Like it's like I said, it's one on one. People come in, I spend that time, I listen to them, I quite literally listen to them with my hands and find out what's going on relative to the symptoms that they are complaining about. And once I hear what's disbalanced, I'll go in there and try to balance that back, either with my hands or without the tools as needed, depending on what the moment calls for.
Mm.
But I mean, 90+%, I could usually just do it with my hands. There are times where the tools will come into play and they'll be helpful.
What kind of tools, like resistance bands, gua sha, what kind of tools do you typically work with outside of your hands?
Now I have them all, like in terms of tools like resistance bands. I have guasa, I have cupping. I use acupuncture needles for
Mhm.
for dry needling. I got that Y strap to do cervical traction. Thinking of getting a laser, but I have other lasers that may or may not come in handy. Depends. Other
Mhm.
vasopneumatic devices. I have a lot of some of the Graston tools for the harder level guasa. I don't know. It's a I mean, I have a lot of different
Yeah.
other different tools. It's no point rattling
Yeah.
on and
A
on
lot of
about
a
it.
lot. What is a Y strap? Was it?
It's one of those straps where you strap it around someone's neck and you to take it and give the neck a pull, a
Ah.
harder pull than just what
Mm.
the hands can do.
Yeah.
Right?
Just
It
leverage.
yes, and that it creates cervical decompression or spinal decompression because sometimes it can go all the way down to the lower back.
Mm. Have you seen or have you heard um, people will go up to pull up bars and they'll just hang
Hmm.
for a while? Is that actually beneficial in decompressing the spine?
That is, I usually recommend inversion tables
Mm.
to decompress the spine. Because I mean, with pull up bar, it's excellent just to stretch open the body and stretch open the vertical lines and the shoulder lines. But most people can't hang for more than 2 minutes on a pull up bar. So an inversion table, I could lie on that thing upside down for 30 minutes to an hour, and
Mm.
sometimes I'll repeat the hours after a rest, so I can get like 2 or 3 hours in of inversion.
Mm.
And you just literally have to lie there and you don't use any strength. So it's nice to do decompression, right? So it's just so you can actually take pressure off your spine, off your joints, and it gives you a moment where gravity now helps you, and it can open up the joints and the spinal joints, and it'll keep you from shrinking. Right? Most people shrink over time,
Mm.
right? If anybody with grandmother and grandfathers that they've seen, or just elderly, you can see that they easily lose between 3 to 6 to more inches, depending on how much they hunch over. But yes, our spine degenerates, our joints degenerate because over time gravity just beats us up. So if you can take your time and hang from a pull bar or hang from an inversion table, or ideally do both, you'll take time and you'll take pressure off your joints, and you'll take this degenerative time, and slow that down. And I find that to be important, and I don't want to shrink. So
Gravity is not our friend.
no, not in this
Are
sense.
there any alternatives that you can think of for people who maybe don't have a pull-up bar, or they don't have an inversion table?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you could do yoga and swimming. It's not gonna do the same level of decompressing as an inversion table or a pull-up bar, but it comes close to at least loosening the body up.
Mm,
And in the swimming, which is an anti-gravity environment, you're kind of mimicking the same idea. Gravity just acts on you less. And with yoga, then they now have aerial yoga where you can actually tie yourself up in a way where you can be inverted too.
mhm.
So different ways, but I find those two arts to be very useful.
I have done aerial yoga, and that is probably the most fun thing I have done in my life.
Oh,
So
good.
I do highly recommend. We're going to circle back a little bit. Um, Piggybacking in the footwear question, a lot of people are turning to barefoot shoes because we walk more often on concrete than earth. Should we be sticking with our Hokas?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the barefoot shoes are good, but you walk around with them on this is why you don't see hospital workers, doctors, and nurses walking around with barefoot shoes.
Mm,
Right? They just their knees, their ankles, their hips will get destroyed. But yeah, the barefoot shoes has the idea is there, right? Maybe use it for house slippers, or if you go out to water parks or beaches, if you're gonna walk on grass, those things are fantastic.
and I love that they asked that question because that's something that's being kind of pushed into the mainstream, especially online now. So much of everything is online.
Sure.
So I like that that was addressed in particular. Um, and then somebody's just curious, do you work with accident patients or just recovery from surgery?
Accident. I'm assuming accidents. That's in car accidents.
Car accidents or even like let's say workplace accidents, like a dog pulled me down the stairs or something.
Sure. I do. We do a lot of yeah, especially my office in the Northeast. We do a lot of the car accidents and work related injuries and so on. Yes, in Newtown, I've had a number of accidents and work comp patients as well.
Mm, a little bit of everything.
Yes, it's
Um,
it's.
And then do you feel static stretching is good or dynamic stretching, especially before participating in a sporting event?
I mean, you do both. Yeah, stretching is stretching. It's like you
Mm,
definitely want to stretch before any sporting events. I'm a big fan of yoga, tai chi, and qigong. I find that if you practice any of these internal arts, it'll be good for you in the long run,
mm.
right? No matter what age you're at, because your goal is to open up your inner channels and allow chi to flow throughout your body, energy to flow. Yoga, I think they call it prana, right? Chinese, we call it chi. Key is to allow the things to flow in your system. It's when it doesn't flow that, issues arrive.
Yeah. Is it just as important to stretch after exercising as it is before, or is it okay if you skip it every now and then?
I mean, stretching afterwards will, you know, increase your recovery time,
Hmm.
right? And it'll minimize any aches and soreness and helps to reset the muscles, and it moves a lot of the lactic acid out because you're stretching. When you're stretching, you're also breathing, and the combination of it will greatly help you, right?
Mm.
In many ways. So yeah, stretching afterwards will only be beneficial for you if you have the time for it.
Is there such a thing as too much stretching?
Too much stretching, I don't find it to be.
No.
No, I mean, maybe it's, certain patients with specific conditions like Ehlers-Danlos where they have lax ligaments, if they overstretch one of their ligaments that's already laxed because they're overdoing it for whatever reason. I just use that as an example. Maybe that could be too much stretching.
Mm.
I'm assuming when you say too much that it actually a detrimental effect,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, that could happen. I mean, and there's people who, they jump into stretching, they overdo it in the sense that they injure themselves. You know, anything too much is it's not a good thing. But if you force a stretch and you rip the muscles, then that's not prudent.
Yeah.
But if you stretch correctly, your body will know when to stop.
Listening to definitely a big theme.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people like to push their body too hard, too fast, and that's with stretching, exercising, lifting weights. What is an exercise young people do in the gym you would say is not good to do?
They don't do squats correctly. They can really blow out their
Oh,
back.
that's a big one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's the
I get a lot of those injuries from young people in the gym because they're pushing it. They see the muscles build and they get overzealous and they push it and they overdo it. They lose form
hmm
because they want to look good in front of their friends or they want to beat their own personal record from yesterday. And they push so hard that they blow out their disc and that's it. It takes them out completely.
hmm
I've these other two boys, not boys anymore, but they overdid it with weights. And the guy basically ripped both his biceps and it ripped both his triceps from just overbuilding. It just built too quickly
uh,
that the tendon couldn't keep up with the recovery, and popped off. I mean, there goes his weightlifting career,
oh,
right? Yeah.
absolutely. That
So
sounds atrocious.
yeah, it is because for his body, he was built up. So after that, with the muscle atrophy, it's just the skin looks awful and the body looks awful at that point.
hmm Like feel the
Hmm.
sting.
Yeah.
I know people. I was in the gym industry for a while. Not even like just with squats. I feel like leg exercises are the biggest thing that people lose form on, whether it's RDLs, deadlifts, even the leg press. I
Hmm.
feel like it's very easy to ego lift
Yes.
because the legs are strong. They're tree trunks.
Hmm.
um, Definitely being mindful. This is my friend, my son and his friends all play high impact sports all year round. Their muscles and ligaments are so tight. I think this has actually contributed to a recent avulsion fracture other than stretching. What is an avulsion fracture?
Avulsion fracture is when they push so hard that the tendons is what attach our muscle to the bone.
Mhm.
That instead of the tendon breaking, the bone rips off.
The
So
bone?
yeah, the bone rips off. So you ever hear of shin splints?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what shin splint is. It's when the bone gets pulled so hard that it's ripping the bone away from the periosteum. So the outer surface of the bone is ripped away, and that hurts. So avulsion fracture is when a large chunk of bone gets ripped off.
Horrifying.
Yeah, it's painful
That is
too.
horrifying.
Yeah,
How
that's
would you be able to treat that?
not if it's completely avulsed, right?
Mhm.
If it's just avulsed a little bit, then yes, we will relax the muscle and you will put pressure right back on the bone and reset the bone.
Uh-huh.
As long as the bone is touching, right? When the bone completely touches down and it resets back in place, it'll heal. And if the bone is separated, it'll still heal, except now you have more bone, right? And
Mhm.
that's what you want to try to avoid is to have your bones elongate or growing out.
Right.
So heel spurs is a type of avulsion, right? Where the heel itself, the tendon is pulling so hard and it rips the periosteum away from the heel. And as the bone rips away, it hurts, but then you're not putting it back, so it'll just lay down new bone. And
Mhm.
it'll rip and it'll lay down new bone. So eventually the heel starts to develop a little bone spur. It's just constant ripping away and it's constantly healing.
Yeah.
And that would create a lot of trouble for people in the future.
Sounds painful.
Yeah, heel spurs are.
That
Anybody?
sounds so painful. I can't get the image out of my head. I'm sorry. You
Mhm.
said when the about the shin splints. What are some other things they can do to prevent or maintain muscle, ligament, and tendon health?
For her, it's the same person with the children doing
I
a lot of
think in
sports
general.
in general.
Yeah. Let's go. Let's just talk to the
Mm.
general people. So we've got stretching, swimming's a good one, decompression.
I mean, that's the stretching is the best thing for for that,
Mhm.
and knowing when to rest, right? To not over push yourself. Everything, if you practice at it gradually, you'll get better and better with it. It's nothing you ever want to just jump into, especially when it comes to weight training and exercise. A lot of people have this idea like, okay, I haven't been exercising in years. I want to get back into it. And they go into the gym and they want to be the best gym member there and just work out like an animal. And then the next day they can't move. And then they're like, oh, this is too painful. I'm going to wait till the pain stops. And the pain would last for almost a week. And by
Mhm.
then they lost motivation and they don't want to go back to re-experience that pain again.
Mhm.
So if you go in and you start off slow, start off with the yoga, learning how to do yoga, learning how to breathe, right? Build that internal strength. Learn how to listen to your body, and then from there start to add on, right? Because in yoga there's different types of positions, like holding a plank. It requires a lot of strength. And some of the yoga practitioners at higher levels, they can go from a plank into a complete handstand. So using those type of principles, like you may want to approach weightlifting from that perspective, where if you're doing weights, you go light at first, focus on form, focus on breath, make sure that your muscles are, starting to adjust to it. And
Mhm.
to let your body know, it's like, hey, I'm going to do this on a daily basis, right? You're going to have to grow with me and get strong, and the body will. So that way, the pain that you feel the next day is manageable.
Mhm.
And then you continue to grow, and you'll reach a point where your body doesn't have any more pain. And then you just have to grow in a normalized way, right? With the young man who I spoke about earlier who popped his biceps and he grew too fast, right? He pushed himself too fast, more than what his body can regenerate. And that's what you want to avoid. You do have to
Right.
take supplements and make sure you spend enough time to allow your body to regenerate while you're growing.
Mhm. I think we need to get that written on every single gym membership. Listen to
Mm.
your body. Doc, you seem to know a lot about muscles in the spine. How can I make an appointment with you?
Oh, that's okay. I didn't know. Yeah, I guess go call the office for an appointment. Like, give my number out on the.
uh,
Yeah,
are you out of Healing Your Way?
yeah, I'm out of here. I'm like healing your way. You probably find our information right on the website. Yeah,
We have
thank
a
you.
fan. Awesome. And I think that's just about all the time that we might have for today. I want to thank you again so much for joining me. You have had a lot of really interesting tidbits. My bicep does still hurt from that story. And
Mm,
again, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us tonight for What's Up Wednesdays with the professionals of the Roundtable. As usual, brought to you by Healing Your Way. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Rumble, all the things. And we'll see you next week.